Now, it's important that you guys understand that after World War II, which is when it was created, by the way, 1948, the world shifted from regular, normal warfare to intelligence services and proxy warfare. The best thing to do is always use clandestine intelligence operations to make things happen. This is how you do coups, destabilize governments, assassinate people, put someone into play that is more friendly to your government. The CIA has been doing this for a very long time. We've done it all across South America, and we've done it in the Middle East as well, okay? Very important that you guys understand this. They were enriching their uranium to 60% plus to negotiate. They wanted to throw that away to get the sanction relief, okay? I hope you guys are ready, because what we're about to go over right now is pretty extensive and it's very important. If you guys want to understand how this happens, we need to go over a couple of things, okay? First thing that we need to go over, guys, is that the Israelis have one of the best intelligence services in the world. They have multiple different agencies. Now, the thing you guys need to understand why the Israelis have such good intelligence is because they are surrounded geographically around people that hate them and don't want them there. If I show you guys a map here in the Middle East, and I'm going to do this easy mode, right? I'm going to do this like, assuming you don't know anything about the Middle East, you don't know anything about foreign policy, I'm going to explain this in a way where even someone who is a moron won't understand, or sorry, will understand. So Israel's here, right? As you guys know. Egypt is to the south, Jordan is to the east, Lebanon is to the north, and Syria is obviously over here to the northeast. And obviously this is why they occupy the Golan Heights, right? Which is Syrian territory that they occupy after the 1967 war. But for the purpose of this conversation, we're not going to talk too much about that. But the point you guys need to understand is that they're surrounded by enemies. Now, Jordan and Egypt are allies of Israel. They both signed agreements with Jordan to basically be allies and not attack them, etc. And they are countries that get a lot of foreign aid from us. Why? Because they play nice with it. Okay. Now, a lot of the Middle East doesn't agree with this or like it. As a matter of fact, the former prime minister or the president of Egypt was assassinated for this. Anwar Sadat was assassinated for making the agreement with the Jews back in the Camp David Accords of 1978 under Jimmy Carter. Okay. So now the rest of the Arab world dislikes being here because they kill Palestinians every day. They occupy Palestinians. They Palestinians, they hold their land, they have no rights. They're basically second-class citizens in their own land, okay? And the Palestinians are located obviously here in the Gaza Strip for the most part. 2 million of them live within proper, and then obviously in the West Bank, right? Which the to call Judea and Samaria, but it's really the West Bank. And they've been building illegal settlements there for decades. I think at this point, we have almost 1 million settlers there, somewhere between 700 to 800,000 last time I checked. And they've been expanding these settlements for a very long time. Okay. So this has created an enormous amount of pressure on it because no one in the Middle East wants them there. Okay. So since no one wants them there and they're surrounded by enemies, even the governments that are friendly with them, their citizens don't like it. Egyptians and Jordanians do not like Israel. It's their governments that play nice with it. But the people that live in these countries dislike because of what they're doing to the Palestinians. Okay. Now, and this is the entire Arab world, by the way, no one likes, even the countries that play nice, UAE, etc. If you ask the citizens, what do you guys think about it? They all dislike it. Okay. The Muslim world in general dislikes it for that reason. Now, since they're surrounded by enemies, they need to have two things in place to keep themselves protected. They have to have a strong military, which we back and support, right? Which they have the strongest military in the Middle East. You can argue, Turkey might rival them, but Turkey doesn't have nukes and they do. And then also, and Turkey's also neuter because they're a member of NATO. So they're not going to do anything, even though Erdogan talks a lot of shit, he's not going to do anything. And then the other thing that they have that's superior to everyone in the Middle East is a fantastic intelligence service. Okay. Now it's important that you guys understand that after World War II, which is when it was created, by the way, 1948, the world shifted from regular, normal warfare to intelligence services and proxy warfare. What does this mean exactly? This means that world powers that are huge don't want to necessarily have their name attached to a conflict because now there's nuclear bombs. With nuclear bombs, this has something called mutually assured destruction, aka MAD, okay? So the way that countries wage warfare nowadays, guys, is they wage warfare via proxy, okay? They will back a militia, a group, or a weaker country to attack a bigger country that they might oppose. I give you a perfect example of this is us backing Ukraine. Russia is a superpower that we look at as an adversary. Ukraine is fighting them. So we will go ahead and give the Ukrainians support and weapons to fight the Russians because them weakening the Russians is better for us. Okay? That's kind of an example of proxy warfare. Now, if we don't have the ability to wage proxy warfare, the next best thing, actually the best thing to do is always use clandestine intelligence operations to make things happen. This is how you do coups, destabilize governments, assassinate people, put someone into play that is more friendly to your government. The CIA has been doing this for a very long time. We've done it all across South America and we've done it in the Middle East as well. Okay. This is the CIA specialty. Okay. Now the Mossad, their specialty is assassinations. They're really good at it. Okay. They kill nuclear scientists all the time. They kill Arabs that, might go ahead and have have issues with etc. So Israel's two strongest features is they have a strong military and they have a fantastic intelligence service. And their intelligence services are as follows, okay? Obviously, you can see all the different, they have the Intelligence Corps, Information Security Department, Resource Department, Air Intelligence Directorate, Naval Intelligence Division, Combat Intelligence Collection Corps. They have the Sayeret Matkal, which is like their specialized forces, Mossad, Shin Bet, etc. But I'm going to focus on a couple of different agencies. Firstly, most important, the Mossad. What is the Mossad? Okay, the Mossad chat basically is the CIA version of this is Israel's CIA equivalent. Okay, they do operations internationally. They focus on international matters. Okay, just like the CIA focus on things international matters. They are our sister agency in the intel world. Then you have Shin Bet. Shin Bet is internal security. Okay, but they also collect intelligence and, work with the intelligence community, right? They are the functional equivalent of our FBI, okay? They're an intelligence as well as a law enforcement agency, all right? So Shin Bet is FBI, Mossad is CIA. Now you got Unit 8200. Unit 8200, guys, specializes in signal intelligence, okay, and code decryption, counterintelligence, cyber warfare, military intelligence, okay? And they are attached to the IDF, aka the Israeli Defense Force. They're military, okay? They're army, essentially, all right? Now, it's important that you guys understand the functional equivalent, I would say, of the Unit 8200 is probably the NSA, okay? Then, obviously, here's their special forces, right? Elite Special Reconnaissance Unit of the Israeli Defense Force. It is subordinate of the General Staff to the IDF. Maybe look at it as like our Ops, our Delta Force, our Green Berets, etc. All right, and then the last one I wanted to say was one other thing I was going to tell you guys. This is like their NSA. Shin Bet is FBI, Mossad is CIA. We talked about that. This is their, obviously these guys are going to be doing, a lot of the operations, etc. on the ground. Okay, if it comes back to me, I'll remember it. And then obviously in the United States, we have the CIA, right? CIA specializes in international clandestine intelligence operations. FBI is domestic, so it's CIA that runs. Now, let's get into the Joint Comprehensive Plan. It's very important that you guys understand this because all of this started with the JCPOA. The JCPOA, guys, was what's known as the Iran nuclear deal. I've explained this ad nauseum, so I'm just going to make it simple for today. Back in 2015, your boy Barack Obama struck a deal with the Iranians to basically oversee their nuclear program, okay? And many different countries were involved. Okay, you can see China, Russia, Germany, Iran, obviously, Turkey, Russia, what else? Yeah, UK, Turkey, not in it, I'm sorry. And obviously the US, you can see John and Kerry here, right? Many different countries were involved. And the reason for this was, this guy looked like Erdogan for a second, I'm sorry. And the reason for this, guys, is because if you have multiple countries involved in overseeing Iran's nuclear program, well, we have many different points of failure, and we have multiple different countries ensuring that they don't get a nuclear bomb, okay? So this combined oversight would ensure integrity, all right? So this was a good plan. Despite what Donald Trump tries to tell you or anybody else, this was a good plan. Now, obviously, here's the deal. We oversee your nuclear program, you enrich at a civilian level. In exchange, we relieve the sanctions. Because as you guys know or may not know, Iran has crippling sanctions, okay? They're the second most sanctioned country in the world. I think North Korea is number one. Someone fact check me on that, okay? So anyway, with that said, we would oversee their nuclear program and ensure that it stays civilian and low levels of enrichment. Now, the Israelis couldn't have this. Why couldn't the Israelis have this? The reason why the Israelis couldn't have this is because the Iranians have been a mortal enemy of theirs for 40 years, as you guys can see from Benjamin Netanyahu. After the Iranian Revolution, the Islamic Revolution of 1979, okay, they basically said, F the Israelis. Why did they say F the Israelis? Well, we need to go back in time a little bit. We need to look at something called Operation Ajax, okay? Operation Ajax, guys, was an operation where the Mossad, the CIA, and the MI5, okay, MI6, excuse me, okay, which is British intelligence, that's their CIA, overthrew the Iranian government, and they destabilized and got out a guy named Mossadegh, okay, the prime minister of Iran, who's democratically elected. They got him out of there. Why did they get him out of there? Because he nationalized the oil. When you nationalize the oil, what basically happens is the government takes control of the oil, and private entities can no longer benefit and make as much money as they would because the government controls it and therefore controls the revenue. The Brits couldn't have that. So they went ahead and ran a coup, got Mohammed Mossadegh out of there, okay, gave him the eat, and then they put in the Shah, okay, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, okay. This was the original Shah. Now, for about 20 years or so, he ran he had the power, okay? It was the Shah from 1941 to 1979. right? And obviously he took power after the after Mossadegh was thrown out of there, okay? And why did we put the Shah in play? We put the Shah in play because he allowed the oil to not be nationalized and allowed private entities to come in and control the oil, right? And obviously the people off. He did this for 20-some years. People got angry, and they had the Islamic Revolution, okay, which led to him being kicked out in 1979. And we'll talk about this real quick, all right? And what ended up happening was they overthrew the Shah. They stormed the U.S. embassy, okay? They took a bunch of Americans hostage, and this obviously led to a lot of problems. This is this is basically what led to a lot of the geopolitical beef that we had with Iran. Okay. This was actually a dark cloud over Jimmy Carter's presidency. And just so you guys know, because Ronald Reagan likes to take credit all the time for getting those people out of the embassy, it was actually Jimmy Carter that made that happen. Jimmy Carter is the one that should get credit for that. Rest in peace to him. It was not Ronald Reagan, as much as people want to say. Fun fact for y'all. It was Jimmy Carter that got them out. He did it up until his last day of presidency, but he never gets credit for it, so we got to tell the truth. Anyway, that's irrelevant. The point I'm trying to make is this is what basically began the beef. So we overthrew their government. We put in a puppet government. They didn't like that puppet government. They overtook their government again, and then there's been beef ever since. Yoga, fire. Okay? And there's a lot more to it than that, guys, but I'm covering like decades of history here, so you guys understand, okay? So this is what led to all the beef, okay? So the Israelis have had problems with the Islamic Republic of Iran since the Shah got thrown out. Also, fun fact, the Shah, Iran was one of the first countries in the Middle East to recognize their sovereignty. Other countries in the Middle East to this day still don't recognize it. So that also people off. Okay. So when the Islamic Republic of Iran came in, okay, they realized to beat the Israelis would be very difficult because the Israelis have Americans' power. They have a very sophisticated and strong intelligence components, etc. So what did they do? They created what's known as the axis of resistance. Okay. And the axis of resistance, guys, okay, I'm going to tie this in why this is important here in a second. The axis of resistance, guys, is a group of countries in the Middle East that basically fight against the Israelis. Okay, they got beef with the Israelis. So Iran is the head. Then you have Iraq, you have Hezbollah, Hamas, PFLP, DFLP, and then you got the Houthis down here in Yemen, right? And from a geographical perspective, look at what this does. This creates a ring of fire almost. So you got the Houthis down here. You got obviously Iran, you got Iraq, you got Syria, you have Lebanon. All of these countries are basically surrounding, okay? And this axis of resistance has been a pain in the ass for a very long time, okay? And the reason why I say this is because Israel's complaint about the JCPOA, remember, we got to bring this back to the JCPOA, right? Israel's biggest complaint about the JCPOA was that if the Iranians have money, okay, aka sanctions are lifted, because they have a lot of oil to sell, if the sanctions are lifted, the Iranians will take that money and do what? Give it to their proxies. Remember I told you guys, after World War II, proxy wars is the way and intelligence operations? Well, the Israelis were worried that with that extra money, they would be able to beef up the axis of resistance, okay? This is why Benjamin Netanyahu came to the United States in 2015 as Obama was finishing up his term and complained and said, we cannot allow the Iranians to be in this nuclear deal. It's a bad deal. And they claimed that the Iranians were still building a bomb, which is not true. Tulsi Gabbard testified to this and said that the Iranians were not building a bomb. How do we know that the Iranians weren't building a bomb? Well, Ali Khamenei, this guy right here, okay, the former supreme leader of Iran, issued what's called a fatwa, okay, or a declaration, a religious declaration, or a creed, essentially, that they would not make a nuclear bomb. And the reason why is because it goes against Islam, right? It's haram, right? And he issued, I think, two of these fatwas. I think he issued one in like 04, 05, etc. He's against it. Now, obviously, the Israelis said, oh, they're still building a bomb, etc. As a matter of fact, instead of me saying it, since we're going ahead and going through this historical journey here, I might as well show you guys, because anyone can talk but very few people can actually show you guys the proof. Oh man, this clip is going to be bomb. Brett, I hope you're watching this shit. We're going to go, guys, 30 years plus of your boy Benjamin Netanyahu saying that they have a nuclear bomb. I hope you guys are ready to go through the time machine with me.
For the invasion of Iraq.
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States
I'll never forget this important quote.
launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The two nations that are vying, competing with each other, who will be the first to achieve nuclear weapons, is Iraq and Iran.
The invasion happens months later. No weapons of mass destruction are found in Iraq.
He doesn't give a shit because, they got Saddam out of there, who was their biggest enemy at the time. They need to get rid of Saddam first, then the Iranians.
This is a fragment of a 2009 US State Department cable released by WikiLeaks. Netanyahu tells members of Congress that Iran is 1 or 2 years away from being capable of developing nuclear weapons.
They're online.
It's 2012, and Netanyahu is holding up his infamous
Oh, I was right.
cartoon bomb at the UN General Assembly.
By next spring, at most by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and
Now, here's the thing. I'll give him credit because this is before the JCPOA, chat. This was before the JCPOA. So he can go ahead and speculate all he wants because we didn't really have eyes and ears on their nuclear program like that yet.
move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb.
And now, 33 years after Netanyahu's first so-called imminent warning, Israel attacks Iran.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year.
That's despite the U.S. Director of National Intelligence saying Iran isn't building a nuclear weapon months earlier.
She said that in March of 2025. Here you go. Right next to Kash Patel.
Iran lied.
But for Netanyahu,
Hold on, did she not show it?
a weapon fight the U.S. Director.
Here, I'll tell you guys right now. Here, let me show y'all. And she changed it after that.
Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon.
This is the Director of National Intelligence. She oversees every single intelligence agency in the country. They all answer to her. What did she say?
Data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has
That was March in 2025, chat.
not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
Now, let me get ahead of the Zionists because I know what they're going to say. Well, Myron, they had nuclear enrichment up to 60%. What are you talking about? They didn't want to have a nuclear bomb. Well, let me tell you, they enriched after we pulled out of the JCPOA, which happened in 2018. After Donald Trump did this.
Last few months, we have engaged extensively with our allies and partners around the world, including France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. We have also
All members of the JCPOA, by the way, who didn't pull out of the deal. Only we did.
consulted with our friends from across the Middle East. We are unified in our understanding of the threat and in our conviction that
That's not true. Unified in our threat, that's not true. It was only the United States that wanted to pull out.
Iran must never acquire a nuclear weapon. After these consultations, it is clear to me that we cannot prevent an Iranian nuclear bomb.
Mind you, guys, with the JCPOA, we were looking at their nuclear program. We had eyes on their nuclear program. We knew what the was going on. The IAEA was sending information to both the Mossad and the CIA. That's how we knew about everything they were doing.
Under the decaying and rotten structure of the current agreement, the Iran deal is defective at its core. If we do nothing, we know exactly what will happen. In just a short period of time, the world's leading state sponsor of terror will be on the cusp of acquiring the world's most dangerous weapons. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. In a few moments, I will...
Now, here's the thing. You guys are probably wondering, why did he pull out the new deal? Well, this guy right here, a.k.a. Mike Pompeo, was like his right-hand man, okay? Mike Pompeo was a huge voice in his ear telling him to pull out of the deal, okay? He's always had problems with Iran. He's a hardcore Zionist. The Zionist lobby in America did not want us in the JCPOA anymore because, like I said before, the Iranians, if the sanctions were lifted, would be able to make a lot of money. When they make money, they're able to go ahead and fund the proxies that attack, right? So I can see why the Israelis didn't want it. But let's be honest here. The proxies attack, that's not really our problem. It's not really our problem. Our concern is we don't want you to have nuclear weapons. I don't give a shit what you guys do with the Israelis. But the Israelis cared a lot about the proxies and their ballistic missile program. But in order to get the United States on board, what did they need to do? They needed the nuclear bomb lie so that they could justify getting the United States involved to help them. I'm going to say that again for you guys. In order to get the United States assistance and help, right, they needed to be able to manufacture something that would be a danger to the Americans. Well, guess what will be? A nuclear bomb. But here's the thing. The Obama administration successfully neutralized that threat by creating the JCPOA and having the United States be able to look at their program. But that wasn't enough for the Israelis because it was never about the nuclear bomb, chat. The fatwa was in place. What it really was about was the proxies and their ballistic missile program. The nuclear bomb was just kind of like, let's just use this so that we can get the Americans on board. This is called geopolitical chess, guys. You need to be able to find something because Netanyahu's fantastic at doing this. Netanyahu is able to take an Israeli problem and find a way to make it an American problem so they can justify us supporting them. That is the key. Now, let's enter in Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo, okay, was the former director of the CIA, and also he was the Secretary of State. Now, why is it important that he was Secretary of State? I'll tell you why. Because when he was Secretary of State from 2018 to 2021, guess what he did? He took the IRGC and made them a terrorist organization. Okay, now, here they are. They were designated, there we go. April 15, 2019. Who's Secretary of State at that point? This guy. So, let's rewind. Just so you guys understand this. 2015, Obama strikes the JCPOA. Trump comes in, pulls out the JCPOA in 2018, right? Becomes president in 2016, pulls out the deal in 2018, right? After he pulls out the deal, what does Mike Pompeo do right after? He puts the IRGC as a terrorist organization, okay? And just so you guys know, the IRGC is kind of like their goal is obviously they answer to the supreme leader only, right? So they're another component of the military, like an autonomous part of the military that has their own thing. And then obviously they have their own army and everything else like that. But the IRGC is their own thing. So the point I'm trying to make here is that he makes the IRGC a terrorist organization. This allows Trump to heavily sanction Iran. So the sanction relief, everything else like that, Trump comes in, tanks the economy, right? Well, the Israelis want that. Weakened economy means they can't sell their oil to the whole market. That means that they lose money. And then most importantly for the Israelis, they can't fund the proxies and they cannot fund their military. They become weaker. Okay? So understand that the big reason that Trump pulled out the JCPOA was because of the Israeli lobby. And Mike Pompeo also is a hardcore Zionist. All right? Also, Trump hates Obama. He undid so many things that Obama did. Okay? But the nuclear deal was actually a good way to keep eyes on their nuclear program. And once we pulled out, that's when they started enriching their uranium up again. But they were enriching their uranium to a high level as a bargaining chip for negotiations, chat. Very important that you guys understand this. They were enriching their uranium to 60% plus to negotiate. They wanted to throw that away to get the sanction relief, okay? They already knew that they couldn't get a nuclear bomb because the Supreme Leader said no, he forbid it, all right? So anyway, very important that you guys understand this.